You're listening to Zoo Nation.
Ready? You have the cameras rolling?
Come on, man.
And welcome to Zoo Nation, where we talk about history as it unfolds and talk about the political zoo of a nation that we're living in. My name is Josh.
I'm Nathan.
We're here talking to you guys about big news, the Trump inauguration, but also some specifics of how his first 2 and 3 weeks in office have been and some of the things that are going on. There's a lot of controversy right now over the role that Elon Musk has, as well as other statements that have been made. So we're going to go into all of that. I want to do some quick housekeeping real fast. Make sure that you're already subscribed if you're watching this for the first time. We're a couple of conservative guys that talk to you guys covering the news, but also sometimes the deep matters of political theory. And so you can find us on social media. It's pretty easy. It's at Zoo Nation 1776 on Twitter, and Instagram should be zoo_nation_. We have a Facebook page as well and a Telegram channel. And those are going to be in the description of this episode here on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey. That's where we have the video. Make sure you also go to Spotify. We're on Spotify as well if you guys prefer the audio format. So that's an important thing to do. Also, if you want to follow just me or just Nathan, you can find him. You should still be Celtics fan 33. So Celtics fan 33. And then for me, I've actually revamped my Instagram recently. It should be Real Josh 1829, and that's on Instagram and X or whatever we're calling it, Twitter as well. Okay, so to get into the news of what we're talking about in this story, obviously everyone in the world, but especially in this country, was very, very divided on how they felt when Trump took office.
Yep.
If you voted for and supported Kamala Harris, you were very sad. You probably feel like, to varying degrees, not everyone feels the same way, that we're going in the wrong direction. Some people think that we're going into full-blown right-wing authoritarianism. Some think, well, I don't like it because it's just going to make the wealthy get richer, things like that. Right. There's all kinds of reasons why you feel upset right now.
Right.
If you voted for and supported Donald Trump, most of us are pretty happy about that. But as the weeks have gone on, we have different feelings about how he's governing. And so we're going to be talking about some of the specifics of that. I think something we should do, because we haven't done this since our stream the night of the election, will be to talk about this election, okay, how it played out in terms of the votes that were cast. Donald Trump not only won the Electoral College vote, but also the popular vote. And so with me, let's just reflect on that election. I think that one thing that came to my mind is just so many people said that Donald Trump couldn't do it. They said his messaging was too bad, that he wasn't conservative enough, and that he wasn't going to be able to beat the Democrats, and that he shouldn't have won that primary. Well, he did, and not only did he win the general by the Electoral College votes, he won the popular vote as well, and that's great. I think also it's important to note that that hasn't been the case since Bush 41, as far as a Republican winning the popular vote solidly like this. And so Donald Trump made history there. And even I did not expect that. Okay, I voted for Donald Trump and supported him because I like him much better than the alternative. But I think that's an important thing to note. And so I wanted to talk about that and say that it's great to see that even despite all the people that said he couldn't do it, that he was able to. But he did it not because he's somehow the superior man. It's because of the voters. He appealed to us in a way, tried to run on a good coalition of support and get in there. And so that's a good way to kick this off. I will say one thing that I thought was the most profitable about this primary, so the 2024 primary, was it's starting to reveal the future of the Republican Party. You're going to have, I'm sure, in the future, DeSantis will run again. Vivek will for sure run again in some form, whether it'll be for president or something else. It may be a Senate or a House role. But it's interesting to see the Republican Party and what's going on with it. And so I do think that 2024 was a peek behind the curtain of 2028. There's probably going to be some of the same cast of characters. We may even have some people like Rubio, who's now serving in Trump's administration, but also ran in 16. He may run in 28, depending on how this term goes. He may distance himself from it. It depends on how this goes. So those are my thoughts on the election. I'm glad that he's in there. He's overall doing a really good job. There's, of course, things that I disagree with as far as maybe the message or the tone or even sometimes the policy, but it's very small compared to the big problems I had with Biden.
No, sure.
So, and, of course, we're in agreement on that. So quickly, let's reflect on the 2024 election, the election night itself, and other thoughts that you have. Please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm happy. I think that it definitely, sent shockwaves through, America / the world as well. I mean, yeah, everybody was watching this as far as, countries go and everything of the sort. It's amazing how just Donald Trump winning changed the rhetoric of a lot of things as far as, all of a sudden Putin was willing to discuss things. China, was interested in certain things. And then also you had the Palestine and Israel talking about, or at least, saying, a ceasefire or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, it's amazing how that works like that. Of course, I'm happy about it. And yeah, does it change the out? Is it? I don't know. It's historic in the sense of the way he won. But is it historic in the sense of this is now changing the direction of America? I think is now the question.
That's smart.
Yeah. So I think now is the question of because typically the trend that I've noticed is Republicans win, they get comfortable, and they don't win again for quite some time. They don't keep it up. Getting comfortable is what I'm kind of concerned about. So I'm hoping that this election, kind of woke everybody up as far as, hey, we can't let, Biden 2.0 or just in general, we can't let that happen again. So, let's keep it up. Let's get the next. I'm hoping MAGA is a movement, not just for an example, an Obama movement. We've had those discussions before, how Obama's had his movement, but it kind of, in my opinion, kind of died down. I'm hoping MAGA doesn't do the same, and there's somebody else that, can carry that torch, I guess.
Well said.
So yeah.
Well said. I would add something that I would kind of focus on would be so when you mentioned people get comfortable, 100% agree. That is the worst problem with the Republican Party. Is that they're lazy. They get in there, they get in office, and then all they want to do is get reelected, not actually deliver for the people that got them in there.
Yeah.
So that's well said. I think that you're right also in terms of, was it historic as far as I mentioned the popular vote, how it hadn't been done? But is it actually going to change the country? That's a good question to ask as well. That has yet to be determined. I will say Trump has a track record. He did this in technically 17 when he got in, not 16. He won in 16. He got in 17. His first few weeks were very similar. He was very good. He immediately signed several executive orders.
Right.
And they were great. Most of them were really good. They did away with a lot of the crap, frankly, that Obama had put in, stuff like that. And Trump has got in, and he signed a bunch of executive orders this time around and undone a lot of the damage from the Joe Biden administration.
Yep.
So the question becomes, but as time goes on, what does he continue to do? Whenever he meets roadblocks like he met last time around, what is he going to do to make sure he delivers for us?
Right.
And that's an important thing to ask, because a lot of people are really, really excited, and I understand why, about the Department of Government Efficiency. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Yeah. But I think the other thing to think about, though, and I've heard multiple people say this too, is Congress is going to have to work.
Yeah.
Congress is going to have to get off their butts and help the Republican president and vice president and actually do something. And it's funny because you and I, this was not public. This is just a group chat you and I are in. But a friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, wrote Lindsey Graham and said, "Why are you talking like you're not going to confirm Cash and Tulsi Gabbard
Yeah.
and RFK Jr.?" Well, then what does he do? He writes back and basically says, "We're not going to line up as far as policy." A few weeks later, it may have even been less than that. It may have been 1 week. He goes on Fox News and says, "I'm confirming all three."
Yeah.
I think that sometimes the possibility of not being elected really shakes politicians when they realize,
does, yeah.
because that guy, our friend, was not the only one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Other people were saying, "Look, you call yourself a conservative. This is the conservative president.
Yeah.
He is putting these people out there. What are you talking about? You're not going to support these people."
100%.
And I think that that's the other thing is we got to be careful in this party to not be a party of only personalities like, oh, Trump is the everything.
Yeah.
But when Trump does stand for what's right, then yeah, there are people in the Republican Party
Right.
who need to get in line
Yeah.
and say, look, these are the principles, not about the person, but the principles
Right, for
of,
sure.
for example, medical freedom in the
Yep.
case of RFK Jr., taking down corruption in the case of things like Tulsi Gabbard. So that is the point. The Senate and the House are going to need to do this
Yes.
as far as cutting back government waste, which I would love. And so we'll see what happens as far as that. I will get into some of the U.S. aid a little bit later, but as far as the election night itself, I was very surprised that Harris said it the way that she did. I think she was told you basically have to concede as graciously as possible. You could tell she didn't want to.
Oh, yeah.
I could just tell
yeah.
that she didn't want to. She was ticked. You could tell at the inauguration, too, that people were ticked. Let me ask you this. We didn't even discuss this in the prep. What do you think of the interchange between Barron and Biden?
Yeah.
That was funny.
Yeah, that was that. Those are memes
Yeah.
to live on for a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Do you have any speculation?
I have no idea, in all
Yeah.
honesty. I know Trump's kept Barron out of the, limelight for the most part and everything. So in all honesty, have no idea what Barron's really like. So I couldn't tell you now if it was like Don Jr. Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a couple things that were said there,
Yeah.
as far as jokes cracked and stuff. But I don't really know what Barron's like.
The funniest one I saw was when he speaks to Biden and Biden looks really crestfallen.
Yeah,
someone commented,
exactly.
Someone commented and said, "You forgot to pardon yourself."
Yeah.
That was great.
Exactly.
I love that. And
Exactly.
imagine Joe Biden realizing, "Oh crap, I
right.
didn't."
Right.
But there's several I saw. There's some people speculated. So there was a news story that came out, and it's the media. So maybe they were right, maybe they weren't. Where they said, well, actually, Barron was all he did was shake Biden's hand and didn't say a word to him. Then he turned to Harris and said something, and Biden felt kind of like left out.
Yeah.
I don't know if I buy that. It seemed that he said something. I don't know what he said. He may have said something. He may have been the same thing to both of them.
Right.
And someone said he said it's over.
Yeah.
Maybe because that would make you feel kind of bad, I guess, because he wasn't going to shake their hands and act like everything's okay. He just kind of shook their hand and say, "You're done," or "It's over." There was speculation about that, and I can understand why that would make someone frown like they did.
For sure.
So that's possible, but
also he has dementia.
The funny thing is, someone commented too and said he's not going to remember in 5 minutes anyway.
So maybe he forgot what was said anyway.
I love the memes where it shows 2016 or really 2017 to 2021, and it has Trump's face, and it has from 2021 to 2025, and it's old Herbert the pervert from Family Guy.
Yeah.
I'm playing with the dog. If y'all are watching, he's being silly. And then it has Trump's current presidential portrait from now to 2029.
Right.
Yeah, I love the Herbert the pervert memes. They're so funny because they're so true of the guy that was in office, and it's just unbelievable to me that a number of people voted for him in 2020.
Right.
Now, you and I hold that there was foul play.
Yep.
To what extent is up for debate, but there were people who legitimately went and cast their vote for that guy, and it blows my mind because people might say, "Well, yeah, he's got dementia now, but he didn't back then." Come on, there were warning signs back then. If you were watching closely,
Right.
if you watched the news, more than one station of the news, you had to have known.
100%.
So, to continue, I think that we can now look at some of the stuff that Trump has done immediately. One of the first things that he did was freeze foreign aid. That was something that he did. And he's also done a number of things regarding immigration policy. It started at about 500 people that were being arrested per day. It's skyrocketed up to about 1,500 a day, between 1,200 and 1,500 and holding. So, come on, boy, come here. So I think it'd be good to talk about the border and also the foreign aid and just his first week. What would you say as far as are you pleased? Do you think that we have some problems? What would you say? Come on, boy.
No, I mean, as far as the border and stuff go, I'm pretty pleased. He's gotten those. He's gotten that pretty much going in action and everything. I'm sure. Hasn't the border wall building started back up again? Yep. So I mean, there's that. I'm pretty sure deportations have started. The one thing I am gonna say though, what we're using Guantanamo Bay as a holding cell for like the really, really dangerous ones. Now he says it's temporary. That's okay if it's temporary, but the problem is like the government will tend to say that these are only temporary, and they
There's an amazing quote from Milton Friedman. I think it said, "There's nothing as permanent as a temporary government."
Right, exactly. So that's my concern, because here's my thing: is like tax dollars going towards maintaining that. Right. So again, if it's going to be temporary, sure, I'm fine with my quote unquote tax dollars going for a temporary holding cell for very dangerous criminals to then be taken elsewhere or whatever needs to happen with them. I'm fine for that. But I have my reservations on how temporary is this, because I don't want to be housing illegal immigrants that are very dangerous here for
indefinitely.
For why?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah. So that's good.
I would say they either need to be on death row if they've committed like a serious murder or something.
Yeah.
Or they need to be deported.
But also, I mean, as far as like death row and stuff like that, I mean, if it's here, if it's been here, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But also, as far as if it was in another country and stuff like that, that's not our say.
Right.
I'm not saying that they don't deserve that, but I'm saying it's just not our say. And then, again, still our tax dollars to do that.
Sure.
So yeah, that's kind of where my thing is if it's just going to be a holding cell, like he says, sure, I'm fine with that. But again, I'm always concerned when anytime, this is temporary. There's a lot of temporary stuff.
Deadline of what, I don't care if it's 30 or 60 or 90 days, but hold to that deadline and then kick them out, basically.
Exactly.
Is the way that it should be. Now, again, to steelman them, there are issues kind of like we were saying of you can't just say, well, you committed murder, even if it was in another country, you get death row. You have to face the legal questions of, okay, how do we kick you out? Where are we putting you?
Right, exactly.
And sometimes these governments are like, no, we don't want them back.
Yeah.
And that's really stinks, because these Latin American countries kind of need to man up a little bit and say, well, they're a citizen of us. They left here illegally and went to your country illegally. Yeah. It's kind of our responsibility, but you can't, unfortunately, from a geopolitical standpoint, make a president or a Congress or a parliament or whatever of another country stand in line. You can't.
Exactly.
You can put pressure, but you can't make them. And Trump has done things to put pressure on Mexico, where Mexico has accepted some of them back, because again, not all of the people that are coming through Mexico are actually Mexican. They're from Central America or South America. Right. So like I say, and we're willing to admit there are hang-ups there, but you can still within, I would say, 60 to 90 days do something about getting them back to where they came from.
No question.
They should.
No question.
So that's an important thing, but please continue.
And in regards to the board, I love the people that are like, oh yeah, you voted for Trump, now he's supporting, all these people and this, that, and the other. Don't you regret your stuff? I'm like, no, this is what we're voting for.
There's an amazing meme of that where this person was like, I hope you get what you voted for, and it's a guy with a MAGA hat saying thanks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we knew what we were voting for, in that sense. So yeah, I mean, I'm cool with that. As far as in regards to the foreign aid talks and stuff, as far as what we're gonna pull out of, what we're not gonna fund and everything else, I'm okay with it. My thing is, as far as foreign aid goes, I'm okay with some foreign aid to an extent. How far we've gone with foreign aid just in general throughout the years has been insane. So yeah, we definitely need to pull back on it, but I'm more concerned on, other internal issues first before we, get to hey, let's, take away this aid. Now, obviously the Biden administration foreign aid, for example, Ukraine, see you later. I'm done with that stuff. That needs to go right off the bat. The funding towards Palestine and all that other stuff, that needs to go too. But as far as stuff that was in place from the Obama administration and on down and stuff, again, yeah, some of that probably needs to go for sure.
Of course.
But let's take a look at other stuff. Let's take a look at our own internal issues first before we get to all that all that other stuff. Stop the internal bleeding before
Right.
the exterior
And I
stuff.
think some people, there's been a lot of people on, and the funny thing is, Twitter used to be the place where thought went to die.
Yeah.
Like you would go there, these people with blue checks were all college professors that were super liberal, wanted communism or neoliberalism and not conservative at all. Now there's actually a little bit more of a back and forth. There's these people over here talking to these people over here.
Yep.
And when it comes to the people on the right that are on Twitter and other places, I've seen some of it on Instagram and Facebook as well. People are really discouraged, like, well, how come Trump isn't getting stuff done or doing enough? And it's like, he's barely been in there. Like, do you really expect him to undo the damage of, I mean, he didn't even finish taking care of the Obama administration.
Right.
He was only in for 4 years. Trump was in for 4 years the first time.
Right.
He was still working on that when he was ousted. Now he's back in trying to still undo that, but also now he's got to deal with the Biden crap.
Yep.
And so it's not going to be, a 1 month and we're suddenly back in 1950s America. That's just not at all connected to reality. And so that's an important thing to note as well. And so I do tend to agree when it comes to, we should have strong emphasis on foreign policy, but we also have domestic issues that are that is a little bit more of like I guess the analogy would be almost like a far away fire versus a fire right inside your house.
Exactly.
And the border would be the biggest one that I would think of.
100%.
And I do like the overturning of a lot of DEI stuff as well, especially in the government. That's been a really, really big blessing as well. There was one wall, I want to say it was in one of the bureaucracies, either CIA or FBI. It was nothing but platitudes about inclusion, diversity, and stuff like that. And it was just like, this looks like a preschooler's wall. Yeah. Like, hey, little boys and girls, get along today. Yeah. And then it was hilarious because someone then came and painted over it, and the left was, crying about it. And people were like, no, this is not a place for little kids to go play. This is a place where adults come into work and do a job. Yep. And why are we having this on the wall? This is not a playground. Yep. And so I really was happy to see that, because we don't need to be babied. There's been a lot of people in this generation, ours, and also the one after us and the one before us even. Yep. That's just not connected to reality of go into work and do your job. We need to have a system that's merit-based, where if you do a bad job, you get fired. If you do a good job, you get promoted.
Any more jobs are realizing they're just hiring bodies at this point, because they're not that people are just showing up. There's very few good workers anymore, and they're just kind of showing up expecting to get a paycheck, and it's like that I showed up to work, therefore I get paid. No, you actually have to work. Just showing up doesn't do anything.
That was a funny thing. I remember there was
makes
a guy,
you a customer.
It makes you a customer. There was a guy that spoke, because Joe Rogan was talking to somebody about it, how some young person said to him, well, it's really hard work. And he goes, well, what is? He said, well, like getting up in the morning and going in. And he's like, that's not work though. Like the work is what starts when you get there. The work is once you've clocked in, you actually have to start doing the work. Getting up and going in is not like, I deserve a trophy for making the hard effort of getting up in the morning. Right. That's just like you said, that's part of life. So, and look, there are certain people who are like that, and of course there's others who aren't at all. They bust their tail from the time they get up, from the time they lay down their head, which is great. I mean, I do think that's another thing that's very polarizing. Is you've got, the people that are working really hard, and they kind of have the rise and grind mindset. 100%. And then those who basically like, well, I've been breathing air here, so I deserve a raise. Yeah. It's like, no, not unless you are productive for your manager and for your, your employer. Exactly. And so that's something that is good to see from a common sense standpoint, coming to an end in the federal government of this idea of a lot of the woke stuff. And so that's something that's good to see. I would say the other thing when it comes to foreign aid, though, so I did see something, and I don't know if it's actually come back. I wonder if it's a negotiating tactic of Trump saying that the Ukraine aid is actually going to start back up. Now, when I saw that, the first thing that went through my mind is he talking to Putin, and this is him, so to speak, using vinegar. You got honey, you got vinegar, trying to show the vinegar and say, well, Putin, if you don't come to the table and you don't negotiate, guess what? I'm going to start sending money and missiles back to Ukraine. I mean, that could be a negotiating tactic, because if it's not, I would be very disappointed, because he said over and over, why are we doing this? This is wrong. So it'd either be a betrayal of why we elected him, or it could be a way to try and beat the drum and say, Putin, the clock is ticking. You
Yeah,
need to
get
come
on
to the
it.
table.
Or Moscow gets glass.
Yeah.
Gets glass.
Yeah, something like that. And look, that is a good negotiating tactic. I mean, there's times you got to be tough. There's times you got to be a little more reconciliatory.
Yep.
He may have been reconciliatory when he first went in this. Maybe the talking tough.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, do you tend to agree with hearing that, or?
I mean, yeah, I could see that. Just of course concerns me. You
Mhm.
know, when we're talking, yeah, hey, we're gonna start it back up and give them aid. It's like it's concerning.
Right.
You know,
Of course
so yeah, I guess it's one of those wait and see type
It
things.
is,
you know?
and I agree with that. I that's my initial thought. But if I'm wrong, if it is him going against what he said he was going to do,
Then it sucks.
then we'll call him to the carpet on that and say,
Yeah.
look, you did wrong.
Yep.
So, and hopefully a lot of other supporters do as well. So I think that in terms of the deportation stuff, that there's a point of, I would say there's some points of agreement that we obviously
for sure.
have on the specifics.
Yeah.
And then there's some mild disagreement that we're going to talk about so the audience can
for
think
sure.
about it. I think it's important for them to
Oh,
consider.
100%.
And so you brought up a point that it's not to say I hadn't thought of it, but I hadn't thought of it in a while because Trump had been in office in a while.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's not like Biden was deporting people. He was saying,
right.
come on in.
Yeah.
So I think some of it is okay, but realistically, so let's get one thing out of the way. There's been a number of woke teachers saying, well, what are you going to do if an immigration officer shows up to the school and basically tells someone, the son of illegal, let's just say, sorry, but you got to go. How are you going to explain that to your children of, why Juan is no longer at school?
Yeah.
Okay, that's pulling on our heartstrings. I'm not really interested in that.
Oh,
Stop. But when it comes to a separate issue, so that's on terms of, that's looking at the illegals perspective. Now we kind of pivot back from that turn and go to kind of what you've been saying, which is okay, but for someone who's not an illegal, whether they're Hispanic or black or white, whatever it is, should we have ICE officers or whatever, INS, not going door to door? And so before I, say what I want to say about it, I would like to hear your points on that, why you're not for that, everything you want to say.
Well, first off, I want to say that I'm not for birthright citizenship because it's actually not constitutional.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, when they were writing all that in there, they actually do state that. So they need to take a look back into that they aren't talking about people born there. It's, I mean, just because if you're from a foreign area and then you have a child here, there's an anchor baby doesn't exist in the sense of that child is not, then if you are an illegal, your child is technically constitutionally considered an illegal too.
Right.
Now
as
again,
it should be.
Right. Exactly. Correct. No, my thing with the immigration and how to deal with it though is, so I'm not for, and I'll restate myself again, is I'm not for going into people's houses and this, that, and the other. Unless, like, for example, let's say it's, it's a coke house or whatever, like there are known drug usage or known major illegal activities, gun selling, like as far as, illegal gun selling, whatever you want to call it.
Arms trafficking.
Yeah, arms. There we go. Arms
or
trafficking.
human trafficking.
Yeah, or human trafficking.
Yeah.
Drugs.
Right.
Drug smuggling, things of the sort. Those things, yeah, sure, go into the house. But as far as like, there's a known illegal immigrant in there. I'm not personally okay with going into people's houses on that one. My idea is just have a no tolerance policy. Which is like I've said before, is you so much as get a ticket, as far as a speeding ticket or run a red light, whatever, and you are found out to be illegal, see you later. That's my thing. And again, my reasoning behind this is because if you end up going into people's houses and this, that, and the other, you're going to have to implement at some point a mass federal force. And when we do those things, when we implement federal forces or anything of the sort, we don't abolish them and we don't get rid of them. And the next administration can use those. And I just don't trust the government. Yeah. So that's my concern as far as, the reasoning I don't want it, because yes, I'm playing off of, possibility of happening, but again, it's that I see both effective, obviously. And yeah, so that's why I say, hey, a no tolerance policy. And I'm talking again, any crime, again, just a speeding ticket, boom, you're found out illegal, you're gone. Which is a lot easier than implementing a federal force, in my opinion. That way, again, it can't be used later in life against American citizens.
Yeah.
So that's my argument, or conservatives too.
Well, so I guess so the audience understands more specific. Well, let's do two scenarios here. So
Yep.
Scenario number one, which you'd be good with. So, like you said, cop pulls over a car, and they were speeding. He's running the plate, and he's looking at the person and saying, something's not adding up. This is a stolen car, or you're not who you say you are. You're working under a false name, something like that. Or, well, you were on a visa, but that visa expired a year ago. Why are you still here? No problem. This is what you would say. No problem with saying, well, we're going to call INS and you're going to get deported.
Right, because of the fact that you, one, already committed a crime.
Right.
Not saying that you're not committing a crime, by being here illegally. Obviously you are, but I'm just saying you've already committed a second crime at this point now. So, yeah. I'm 100% okay with that.
And it could be anything from as mild as that to as extreme as, okay, we caught you doing armed robbery.
Yeah, 100%.
Whatever.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Second scenario, let's just say we'll go here. Someone knocks at the front door, you open it, and they're like, hey, we're looking for, and they name some name. Where is he? That would be a scenario where you were just not okay with.
Me personally, I'm not okay with that.
Okay.
Yes.
All
personally.
Right.
Yes.
So that sketches that out clearly. So let me also make sure I understand. So the idea is that if we do that, then that creates part of the government that can, in the future, it probably wouldn't be used now.
Yeah.
But it can in the future be used against us or against
anybody.
People. Anybody.
Right.
That doesn't deserve to have that in their lives.
Correct.
Just an innocent victim.
Correct. And we can say it's temporary, but again, I just talking about the Guantanamo Bay thing, I don't believe in anything that's temporary.
Right.
So yeah, that's some of the reason behind that. As far as I don't see it being temporary, and I don't see it getting abolished afterwards or anything of the sort. So yeah.
And I understand that my concern is kind of twofold. So we're looking at, okay, so you would have the potential of an abuse of liberty, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
With the creation of this, let's just call it a new federal agency or
whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
That could potentially infringe on freedom. It could hurt our liberty.
Correct.
I would contend that allowing people who have come into the country illegally who haven't committed a crime, I want to specify, I know that when it comes to committing a crime, you and I are on the same page.
Yes, right, of course.
But in the sense of those who have come in illegally, but the point is that's the only crime they've committed, I would contend that that's actually a problem of liberty as well, because what you're doing is allowing people to be here that have broken the law. And is there a possibility that they're not going to break the law in the future? Yeah, there's a possibility.
Right.
But the issue that I have with that is the other stuff. So, for example, with flooding the job market of cheap labor, that's a problem. I mean, and that at least, okay, you've got positive liberty and negative liberty. Negative liberty has to do with being left alone. Positive liberty has to do with the ability to do something.
Right.
By allowing these people to stay, you are affecting Americans' positive liberty,
right?
Their ability to go make a living in some sense. I
right.
mean, it's not that they can't. It's harder because there's other people that are willing to work for way less because they're feeding their babies with beans and rice. I don't know how they're doing it. Probably getting government doll and working under a false name in some 100%. Cases. So that's the other problem is, okay, if they're here illegally, are they going to work under their name or a false name? If they're working under a false name, that's identity theft,
right? Of course,
and so I think
if that gets discovered,
right? You would join me in saying, well, then they should be prosecuted for that. You and I would, agree.
Once discovered,
right. But in terms of if they don't, but they're working, I guess, under their name, or maybe their employer's not asking what their name is. I don't know. It depends on the situation, I suppose. You would say that it's okay for them to be here illegally as long as they're not making any future crimes. And that, to me, it sounds like a form of amnesty.
To an extent, yes. But with as strict as the no tolerance policy would be, it's not, to an extent. Because again, just like we said, so we're also kind of taking the, let's say COVID restrictions into play here, as far as like tell on your neighbor, essentially, as far as like, for example, hey, this person's committing identity theft. You're hoping that the employer would then call people, hey, that there's this person committing identity theft. There you go. There's your reason for investigation, et cetera, et cetera. So you're also taking some of the things that they did implement with COVID into play, which actually were pretty effective in those states. So it's not to say that people won't tell on other people. So there is that. Also, in the sense of, I guess, yes, you can look at it in the sense of amnesty. But a couple things on that. So as far as like the job thing, as far as cheap labor, no matter what you do, let's say you get rid of all the illegals, right? Okay. You're still going to find cheap labor. Companies are always going to try and find cheap labor no matter what they do.
So it doesn't matter?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
For example, let's take like Elon Musk, for example. Elon Musk has gone out and hired people from like India, because it's cheap labor. So these big companies are still going to find cheap labor regardless of what they're doing. I'm not saying that, it's okay, or then makes it okay for these people to be here, this, that, and the other. No, that's not the argument I'm making. My only point is the job situation. It's not necessarily getting rid of them is not necessarily fixing it, because companies are still going to find a workaround as far as to find cheap labor. That's all I'm saying. In that side of things. So it's not at all saying this is okay, this, that, and the other. Also, with the no tolerance policy, at least on the one hand, yes, again, we can play this as a amnesty thing, I guess, sure. But at least on the one hand it's making the ones that are here illegally very, how should I say this, wary of, you still have to play by so many stinking rules. It's almost not even worth it to an extent. Or eventually at some point you're going to get found out anyway, because again, you're already committing something, because you apply for a job, you're going to have to commit some form of identity theft at some point in time. So that's kind of my point with the no tolerance policy. Is it's effective, in my opinion, it's effective enough without just going house to house. More effective than house to house, in my personal opinion.
So what's the difference between, because I'm trying to understand the distinction.
Yeah.
Between, for example, an employer calling the feds and saying, hey, this guy's under this name, but I don't think this is him, for example.
Yeah, for sure.
A question about identity theft. What's the difference between that and somebody calling in and saying, I think this person is here illegally for other reasons?
Right.
Because in that sense, the first
scenario, in terms of like a federal force or like what do you
either mean? When I say the feds, I just mean it could be anyone. But because in the first scenario that I mentioned of, okay, there you have a possibility of identity theft, right?
Yeah.
Which you would be for the investigation and or deportation of that. The second scenario where people have other reasons for thinking someone's here illegally, that would be more like what you're talking about, where it's not clear if they've committed another crime other than being here illegally. I guess I'm asking the question, how come one crime should be prosecuted but not the other?
And it's not necessarily that one crime shouldn't be prosecuted. It's a sense of, I guess, how do you prosecute the other crime? It's the process in which you prosecute the first original crime, which is being here illegally. We both agree on that. So that's the biggest thing. And I guess the difference between, reporting and like the no tolerance and the federal is the agency, whatever we want to call it, federal force or whatever, is the sense of who's doing the investigating, right? I'm not for, we already have enough spying on us as is. I'm not for another federal agency opening up this huge database. Oh, this person, we got to discover this database of who's illegal, who's not, this, that, and the other. I'm not for that. Release of information and all that other stuff. I'm not for all that. Now, as far as, again, telling on your neighbor type thing, investigating a report, is different. If I call, and say, hey, I think my neighbor across the street is running a meth lab, they're going to investigate that. Why? Because they have reasonable suspicion, not because they pulled a database. I'm not for this, again, all this information release and just, being able to do even deeper dives into people's information than what we already have. That's also my thing on that. So the difference is a report system where you have more, you at least have something to go off versus just now we have everybody's database here that we can pull at any moment in time and, discover any which thing, I guess. So yeah.
I would contend that you can use the same process you're talking about, which sounds like probable cause and getting a warrant as an example.
Yeah, for sure.
I would argue that you can apply that to being here illegally as well as other crimes. I don't understand I do, but I don't agree with the drawing of the line at more crimes besides coming in illegally.
Right.
I would draw the line at the entrance into the country illegally and say, well, you can still use probable cause, the Constitution, and not infringing on the liberties of regular Americans. You and I are not here illegally, right?
Right, of course.
And there's no probable cause to think that we were. Well, as other people, there would be. And so I still think you can use the legal system for that crime without saying, well, if you're here illegally, but you aren't committing any other crimes, we just sort of forget that.
Right.
And you're admitting that it's illegal, but I think your emphasis is they would need to commit another crime for them to actually have to go.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where you and I would differ.
Right. Would differ 100%.
I will say, whenever you first brought that up, I didn't really understand, but then I did some thinking about it, and I still don't agree.
Yeah, no, 100%.
But I do see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Because as you pointed out, that could be used to, for example, revamp the Patriot Act.
Right.
And that could be a potential concern. But I would argue that because this is happening, Rand Paul was talking to Chris Christie about this in 2016. Now, you can prosecute but still do it constitutionally.
100%, no question.
And so I think that if that were to happen, you and I would have way less disagreement. I think as long as it was done constitutionally, there wouldn't really be an issue there.
But just with past issues that we've had.
Sure, where people said it was constitutional when it wasn't, I think is what you would contend.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's kind of the concern of where I stand at, is why, again, I'm not saying that it's not.
Also, if you notice that Nathan's a lot brighter than I am, it's
there's
because there's an angel from heaven that's coming back. I'm just kidding. It's the rapture. No, it's just the sun. So,
but yeah, so I'm not saying that the initial crime is not illegal. It's not coming in here illegally.
Yeah, I
100%.
understand that's not your claim. Yeah,
but yeah, I just think that also, again, as far as they come in here illegally, it's hard to. You still have to open up a database once they come in here illegally, and that again, opening up more database becomes an issue for me too.
Well, I think that to
then track them down, this, that, and the other.
Bit of a deeper question. So, whenever we admit an immigrant legally, are you for us having a record of their entry or not? Because I think that if you had a record of the legal ones, you would then be able to relatively easily.
Yeah, I mean, I'm for that.
Right.
I would be for that. Yeah, I'd be okay with that one.
Okay.
But as far as again,
couldn't you figure out based on someone that's here illegally? Wouldn't you be able to then look at that list of people that have been admitted legally?
Potentially.
And say, well, I don't see you.
Yeah,
something like that.
Potentially. But then the question, still, you're opening up a database later to I don't see you on this list. This is where this person lived. Again, I'm not. Again, the door-to-door thing is the concern, and more databases. I'm just not a fan of it.
And I get that, but I think that by having a list of people that are admitted legally, it could be useful to weed out those who are illegal. And is there a downside to that in the future? Yeah, but I would contend it's not as bad as the alternative, is what I would
for
say.
sure, and I could understand that. But again, I guess my fears just weigh over the other stuff. And also, again, I feel that a no tolerance policy, it's going to be so hard to not commit a second crime. We'll say second crime in this case. So sure, we'll call it amnesty, I guess, in a sense. But one, I guess, to an extent, it makes things quote unquote safer in a way, because there's a no tolerance policy of if you even commit a speeding ticket, See you later. Yeah, so it at least puts the ones that still, stay under the radar, in such a fine, line that they have to stay on, that it's almost impossible to not screw up.
Yeah, I think to summarize, probably before we move on to the next topic, unless you have more to add.
No.
I think this has been good. I would say sort of the perspective, to state it quickly for each one of us, would be that you view the possible infringement on liberty of, for example, like a federal force being created. That is top priority of don't let that happen.
Yes.
Whereas with me, I think it would be, but by letting these people that have come in illegally but not commit any other crimes, that would be a worse downside than the possibility of this. You're saying, well, the possibility of that is not as bad as the possibility of this government doing X, Y, and Z. And that's
I'm
a little bit of a subjective, thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's good. I think the audience now is more educated for having heard it. I think the next thing to kind of go on to is the stuff we actually, so we talked about the Department of Government Efficiency. One thing that's made a lot of news, what are you doing, boy, is Elon Musk is actually paying for, I've seen 3 and I've seen 5 ads during the Super Bowl about the corruption in our government. Yeah. Which might make this one of the most watched Super Bowls. I think someone was saying, I'm going to put it on mute and just watch and then wait for the commercials and see the DOGE ads.
Yeah, because I have no interest in the Super Bowl.
Do you think they will allow that?
I mean, if you're paying for it.
If you pay him enough, maybe. But I'm just saying, he's got to be paying a pretty penny.
Yeah, I mean, if he's paying for it,
there's stuff they do not want getting out. And if he talks about it enough, then people are going to start asking some serious questions like, what in the world? Henry Ford famously said, if people truly understood the banking and financial system in this country, there will be a revolt tomorrow.
Right.
I really think that if a lot of this crap came out, that there would be a lot of people demanding answers. Like, what in the world are you doing? I mean, there was one thing I remember years ago that came out, that there was some part of our government that was doing research on pigeons with slot machines. It's like, how in the world does that advance our interests in this world? It doesn't. And so that's just the tip of the iceberg.
There's for sure.
Really stupid stuff.
No question. And I'm sure if people knew half of the stuff that's going on in the government or anything of the sort, that goes on, just within, our country, there'd be a revolt today. The problem is so many people are blind.
Did you see any of the stuff that Trump declassified?
No. You talking about the RFK stuff?
Well, JFK.
I mean, JFK, not RFK. Yeah. JFK and stuff like that.
So maybe RFK too, the dad, not the son.
Yeah.
I was talking about his uncle JFK.
Yeah.
So you did see some of that?
Yeah, I saw some of that. I also Martin Luther King stuff. I looked at some of that stuff. Yeah. We haven't. I guess we're not going to get the full stuff until like 2027, I believe.
Something like that.
But I mean, some interesting stuff's already come out of that, as far as like Martin Luther King might not have been the best guy. But here's the thing. I mean, I guess bad people, or like not great lifestyles, people that live not so good lifestyles can still have, I guess, good ideas. You know what I mean? A broken clock's right twice a day. I guess is what I'm trying to say, is like, even though he might have been doing some bad stuff, he had a good idea as far as all people should be treated equally. He's not wrong in that. But yeah, there's still it's kind of interesting. There's some interesting stuff in some of those.
So with JFK, there was a video, and it sounded like audio from President Lyndon Baines Johnson,
right,
saying, implicating himself, to say the least. I want to use the correct legal jargon. I don't want to say anything not factually true. Implicating himself in the death of JFK. Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was the vice president for JFK, then became the next president. And he made some statements to someone, I'm not sure who, was probably behind closed doors. It sounds like it was behind closed doors, and it was then declassified, implicating himself. Yeah. And I already had suspected that, considering some of the stuff he did on his first day whenever JFK got killed. I just wondered, like, this just seems like this was planned. Like, JFK was killed, and I'm not going to go into the rabbit hole on that. I've got an episode about it on my podcast about what I think exactly happened.
Well, I've got a
theories on that.
I've got a feeling that we're going to find out later too that the assassination of MLK was not by who we thought it was.
Yeah.
There's multiple
a lot
things.
of theories.
There's
on
things
that.
that have already come out with that. I mean, for example, he was shot from an apartment building.
The
or
King
hotel.
family doesn't believe he did it.
Yeah, I know.
That's
yeah. And
really
the reason,
interesting.
right? The King family, they actually won a lawsuit
Right.
too, and they
Yeah,
didn't do it for a lot of money. I
Right.
think it was like a case for $100
Yeah.
just to kind of prove it wasn't for money.
To clear his name.
Right, yeah, to clear his name and prove it wasn't even for money.
Yeah.
We're not doing this for money. We're not doing this for fame. It's like, no, we legitimately. But fun fact, just a couple fun facts for you. The window that he was supposedly shot from, the FBI, there was a tree that was right in front of that window a day before. During the investigation, though, before they investigated it, the FBI came through and cut that tree down, and it's actually on record. So I got a feeling that maybe in some of those declassifications, we might find, hey, MLK wasn't necessarily.
And that was one thing that Trump said in an interview with Joe Rogan. He said he would declassify it, and promises seem to have been kept. Again, not all of it now. Some of it in 2027.
Of course.
But it sounds like promises.
It's in the process. Yeah.
And that's a really good thing. So glad to hear that. But the whole thing with LBJ, I've always been convinced he was a very corrupt guy, and it sounds like he really was based on some of what we know now.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's an important thing to note. I think we were going to talk about the U.S. aid stuff, as I said earlier about Congress. A lot of it, I think, with the Department of Government Efficiency is going to be them pointing the finger and saying, hey, these agencies are doing this, this, and this. And then it's going to be up to either Trump or Vance or Congress, and Vance acting as the president of the Senate, because that's what the vice president is, saying, all right, pull the plug. We're no longer doing this. This is a waste of time, waste of money, waste of research and government assets. The question becomes, and we were kind of saying this, but I wanted to, I guess, discuss it a little further. What do we think will happen? Do you think, if you had to predict, will they do? I would say, if I had to make a prediction, some stuff will get better and other stuff will remain untouched. Yeah. I think that it's not going to actually go away, number one, because mankind has fallen. We can't have a utopia here.
Of course.
But secondly, because I'm not seeing a whole lot of stuff that's going to stick. I think that Trump has probably some of the right ideas, some of the will, but it's going to take more people to get this done. Probably another president in the future. Right. Really, in a lot of ways, a lot of bad actors in Congress are going to have to go. And so I would just, call out the people. Yeah, Lindsey Graham for sure. But I would call out, you listening to this, call out your senator, call out your representatives, and whether that be on social media, whether that be showing up to meetings that they're in, whatever it may be. Right. Ask them questions, and ask them the hard questions too. This is an important thing to talk about, because this will shape the future of our country, the future of the Republican Party, but also everything. And so I think that's an important thing, because Congress has, in a lot of ways, abdicated its role, and all they do is vote on stuff that in a lot of ways is kind of like omnibus spending packages. Right. There's not a whole lot else they do other than renew the Patriot Act and send foreign aid. They don't really do a whole lot else. It's a lot of wasteful stuff. 100%. The president does a little bit more, but the main thing that I want from Trump, I would say, is call out the rhinos. Yep. The people that are refusing to do the right thing. He needs to get on Twitter and Truth Social and say, hey, Oklahoma, do you really want to reelect this guy? Hey, South Carolina, do you really want to reelect this guy? And that's one of my biggest criticisms of Trump, is not, going at it with Lindsey Graham a little bit more. He really needs to call him to the carpet and say, what do you call yourself, a conservative? Yep. Bull crap. And I wish he would do that more. So I think that's something that needs to happen, because Elon can only do so much. Vivek, who's also in the DOGE, as far as legal power, a lot of that I think is going to have to come from Congress. Oh, yeah. And so if that's the case, I'll say, again, it's not that I think they're going to do nothing. I think they'll do something. Right. Because Elon is going to want to get it done, and he's smart. He is. Yep. But they're not going to be able to get it all done. I think that it's probably going to take, probably another Republican getting in there, and probably some people from Congress getting in there, new people, to actually have this stick. Would you tend to agree? Yeah, no, I mean, I 100% agree. Yeah. It's a good idea, but at the same time, you're probably looking at a few year plan
to get this to stick, like you said.
Right.
So yeah, no, 100%.
Sounds good. Well, I think that the way we could wrap this up is a discussion that I wanted to have with you about the states within our country. So we're going to talk about that next, about the idea of a national divorce. I'm actually